Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So guys, we got some big news to discuss today. Please stick with me to the end of this video, and if you enjoy the video, please click like. It helps out with the algo. We got some big news to discuss. So much has happened in the last 24 and so much more. Now before we start, I always like showing you guys something you might not have seen before. This is not something you need, okay? This is just something you might not have seen before. So for all of you guys who are anti-capitalist or, you just can't stand to see the promotion of any products in a video, well, then just, I guess, leave right now. There's a communist country, authoritarian country down the way that is recruiting people right now. This is a lightweight dinghy. Okay, I've always wanted a portable bug-out boat to put in my bug-out bag or my vehicle, just in case, maybe you want to go. Maybe you got to go off to the shelf and you don't want to get your feet too wet. So, you want to do some fishing or whatever the case might be. Or maybe you just need to bug the hell out. You just never know. So we're going to do a review of this lightweight dinghy. This is actually a really good company. This is Climate. So it's not cheap crap from the Far East. Probably made in the Far East, but it's not cheap crap. Okay, so let's just get right to this video. Now that we're past that. All right. So, big news, guys. Some big stuff brewing. Now, first and foremost, yesterday I made a comment in passing about how the likelihood of a concession on the part of Ukraine was very low. And somebody presumed that I was speaking as a matter of preference or something like that. And the fact of the matter is, I'm just speaking matter-of-factly. So when I say that the likelihood that Ukraine is not going to make a concession in the war is pretty high, that's not necessarily my preference. This person was like, oh, how dare you say such a thing, Nate? How dare you insist that the Ukrainians make concessions of their territory? I wasn't saying that. I'm just saying if they choose not to, which they are saying explicitly that they are not going to do, then the war is going to escalate. Here's the thing, guys. These parts of the country that Russia controls right now, there's a lot of pro-Russian people there. So these are territories that they can actually effectively lock down without having to worry about some kind of guerrilla insurgency. And this is the whole thing. If Ukraine were to actually take those territories, you're going to have the exact same situation. I think, this is just my opinion, as you had since 2014, where you had this ongoing war in the Donbass. So you're going to have constant upheaval. The same is true if Russia tries to take places like Kiev, where they're very proud nationalistic Ukrainians. So both of them are in a bit of a bind, because on the one hand, Russia needs to neutralize, from their perspective, the military, or demilitarize the rest of the Ukraine in order to ensure the security of the territories it's taken. And on the other hand, Ukraine is not wanting to make any concessions right now. But remember, there was a time when Mr. Zelensky was willing to make those concessions, and then Biden made a phone call and all that went out the window. So, advisor to President Vladimir Zelensky, Mikhail Pontolyak, says, I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, after a while, with renewed vigor, the Russians will gather weapons, manpower, see their mistakes, modernize somewhat, fire many generals, and start a new offensive, more bloody, and on a larger scale, he said, which is why we cannot commit to a ceasefire or commit to any sort of concessions of territory. They rule out an agreement entirely that will include land concessions, and they will not accept any agreement from Moscow that will include the concessions of territories. They must, he said, be defeated. They must suffer a painful defeat, as painful as possible, he concluded. So guess what, guys? The apocalypse is coming soon. And I say that in jest, but I'm actually being quite serious about it. Now, Russian heavy artillery guns claim to have wiped out U.S.-made M77 howitzers. The Russian team's self-propelled artillery guns are fulfilling the task of destroying the Iranians, maybe that was a Biden slip there. Ukrainians' military strongholds, fortifications, manpower, and military hardware. According to the Russian Defense Ministry, they uploaded a video showing crews of these 152 millimeter self-propelled artillery guns, wiping out a Ukrainian unit of U.S. man-made M777 howitzers in the special military operation in Ukraine. So apparently a lot of this stuff which is being shipped in, as soon as it comes in, it's getting neutralized by the big guns. Apparently EU's weapons stockpiles are depleting, according to the EU bloc's foreign affairs chief, Joseph Borrell. He has warned that the most obvious example of such shortfalls are the depleted stockpiles resulting from the military support that we're providing Ukraine. And he talks about how combined defense spending across the bloc has only increased by 20% from 1999 to 2021 compared to 66% for the US. And get this, 292% for Russia and 592% for China. So they are running out of weapons. One thing to keep in mind is that a lot of people think, oh, you got all these European countries who are all, showing their support for Ukraine. But the difference is that you have Russia that has a population of 144 million people. Okay, 144 million people acting unanimously is a lot different than all these other countries trying to, get their militaries to come together, to train together, to be interoperable together. It's a much harder task. So while it may seem on paper that the Russians are outmanned and outnumbered, there's a lot to be said for a smaller force which is more cohesive and unilateral in its decision-making process. Lithuania has withdrawn its ambassador to Russia. I can't remember if it was Lithuania or Latvia who recently just cut itself off from Russian energy and natural gas. We have the United States who's building multi-billion-dollar Arctic military base, or restoring, I should say. The U.S. plans to invest billions on Arctic defense, including modernizing its Thule air base in Greenland due to increasingly aggressive behavior from Russia. So they're basically fortifying what once was a Cold War era military base, and it's basically used as an advanced warning system to detect and track ballistic missiles. So they are going to be fortifying their positions in the Arctic. Now, there's a big story out of China that we need to talk about, but I just want to share one more thing with you guys. I was talking to a friend last night who's fairly knowledgeable and has connected me with people like Peter Pry, Dr. Jay Block, among others. And he had mentioned, and this has come up in our discussion with Dr. Pry and Arthur T. Bradley, who's a NASA engineer, about electromagnetic pulse-based weapon systems. So EMP weapon systems that don't require a nuclear detonation. And this is key. This is something which Russia could potentially utilize. These are called flux compression generator bombs. We're going to do a more detailed video on this because not many people know about this. Now, basically what it would do is it would take out all of the electronics, disable the entire grid, the communications, and likely disable a lot of systems, be they military, hardware, or otherwise, on the ground, including, aviation, tanks. Potentially some of this stuff is going to be hardened from EMP. But the problem is a lot of military hardware is only hardened to EMP to a certain extent. Now, apparently, according to the discussions I've had with people who are in the know, they can create EMP weapons which can far exceed the thresholds that these things are designed to withstand, okay? I'll just give you a brief summary here. So high power electromagnetic pulse generation techniques and high power microwave technology have matured to the point where practical E-bombs, electromagnetic bombs, are becoming technically feasible with new applications in both strategic and tactical information warfare. The development of conventional E-bomb devices allows their use in non-nuclear confrontations. So we hear this talk about weapons of mass destruction. Not many people, I would venture to say 99% of people don't know what an EMP is, or if they do, they don't know that you can have an EMP weapon without having a nuclear detonation. Will an EMP, if used, be classified as a WMD? And will, of course, that would likely bring NATO into a greater conflict. Now, we're going to talk more about that in the future, but I just wanted to mention that because that's one of the wild cards here. We've done many videos on this. We've interviewed people about the use of these particular types of weapons, but we must keep in mind at all times that these are wild cards that these military superpowers who have this level of technology can play, and they haven't played them yet. They haven't even played their cyber cards yet. Now, apparently, NATO member Denmark is going to be sending Ukraine anti-ship missiles as well. It sounds like the Biden administration is going to be sending some more heavy equipment, which will allow Ukraine to penetrate potentially deep into Russia. And of course, we know that that is going to be an escalation, and that may well put Kiev in the crosshairs once again. Why they aren't right now, I'm still perplexed as to why. Your guess is as good as mine. The best explanation I've heard so far is that because of the gas pipelines that run through the country, they need to keep those operational because, of course, the Russians benefit greatly from having that gas flow into Europe through Ukraine. And of course, were Ukraine to disable those natural gas pipelines, which I believe they had disabled one, or they had threatened to. I'm not sure if they followed through with it, because of course that would basically, that would cut Europe off, and that's the same Europe that's supporting them right now. So there's economic reasons as to why it's not, that they're not targeting Kiev in the same way that they are the rest of the country, in addition to the fact that were they to do that, it would be kind of a waste because the nationalist sentiment is so strong there that they would likely forever face asymmetrical, guerrilla uprisings and upheaval. At least that's what I'm guessing based on what I know, which is not everything. I don't know everything by a long shot. Now, let's move over to I always get it confused. Is it the Southeast China Sea? Yeah. Okay, now there was a leak. Now we all know about the Biden thing by now, where he said that he's going to basically support Taiwan militarily, explicitly. We had a couple weeks ago where there was something removed from a US website that recognized Taiwan, that didn't recognize Taiwan as part of China. And now that same page is recognizing their independence. That was on a government website. But of course, Biden had made a gaffe, and then they tried to walk it back afterwards. But China, isn't stupid. They see the writing on the wall. Now, apparently on May 14th, there was an audio that was leaked from a secret Chinese military meeting with high-ranking officials discussing plans to invade Taiwan and defeat the U.S. forces on the island's periphery. Okay, the 57-minute audio clip was leaked online by Jennifer Zing, a Chinese human rights activist. Now, the question is this just disinformation? Is this intentional disinformation being put out by the Chinese government? A lot of people suspect that if they were to take Taiwan, they would try to do it politically via some sort of coup, in order to preserve what is most valuable in Taiwan, which is the economic strength of the island, as well as the chip manufacturing capabilities. Okay, the chips are the most important thing in the world right now. Taiwan is a gold mine. Not many people realize how important the Taiwanese chip manufacturing is, how valuable it is. The chip is everything, okay? It's the future of computing, AI, all the military hardware requires these sophisticated chips. So this is why Taiwan is so important, and this is why it's more important to the US than Ukraine. Unfortunately, it's sad to say we have to, that everybody's not equal, but it's just the way it is, okay? You could say that Ukraine has grain, they have natural gas and things of that nature, but when it comes down to something rare that nobody else has, Taiwan has what nobody else in the world has, and that is the ability to engineer computer chips with great precision and sophistication. Now, what were they saying in this meeting? In the video audio, officials and commanders are heard saying that they will resolutely implement the orders of the party, the what is it called? The PLA, Central Committee, President Xi, and resolutely complete the Guangdong mission to secure the resources to achieve a strategic and decisive victory. Guangdong province is a province which is located not too far off the coast of Taiwan. We will not hesitate to start a war to crush Taiwan's independence and the intrigues of powerful enemies, and to resolutely defend our national sovereignty and our territorial integrity. Now, here's supposedly what the plan is, okay? They detail the mobilization in 6 major cities in the Pearl River Delta and the main development of the 74th Army Group as basic support. Now, I'm going to post a link to this video in the description section so you can watch it after, but stick with me because we've got a lot more stuff to talk about here. What's our time? 15 minutes, all right. 1,358 units of various types with a total of 140,000 personnel, 953 ships, 1,653 unmanned aircraft. That's a lot of unmanned aircraft. 20 airport terminals, 6 shipyards, 14 emergency mobilization centers, grain and oil depots, hospital, blood bank, 15,500 military specialists of various specialties, 10,000-ton RO merchant ships, not sure what that is, 38 aircraft, 588 trains, and 19 civilian facilities, including airports and docks, as part of the mobilization plan to offer full support for the decisive battle in the Taiwan Strait. So anyways, it goes on and on. All you need to know is that the war is going to happen in some way, shape, or form. Okay, they are going to try to take it in some way, shape, or form because the future really is there. Now, the only way that I can see them being willing to forego Taiwan, which I just can't see at this point, no matter what happens, is if China somehow makes a breakthrough in their own chip manufacturing process. But still, there's still the geostrategic importance of Taiwan. Okay, it's really, it would be like the Americans giving Taiwan apparently $70 billion worth of weapons over the past few years would be like, you know, Russia giving the same to Cuba. You know, it's literally exactly the same scenario. So you can see why China feels that their national security is at risk, whether you like the Chinese government or not. It is what it is, okay? Now, we know that the United States has pledged to defend Taiwan militarily by fighting China in the event of Beijing invading the island. And this is a war that the U.S. may well commit to, because even though the Chinese have a lot of nukes and they're ramping up their nuclear capability, it's not as great of a threat. They don't have the Satan missiles yet, okay? But if they get buddy-buddy with Russia, which they apparently are, and which Lavrov has stated in a press conference today that, you know, the Chinese-Russian ties are strengthening, and that is the future, and that is where they are moving towards, sending their resource wealth to China so that China can manufacture it into stuff and send it back or send it wherever else. So those ties are only strengthening. So it really is going to boil down to, you know, how strong are those ties going to be when this all does go down, if Russia is going to extend its nuclear umbrella support to the Chinese. Even though, like I said, the Chinese have nukes, they have ICBMs, they just don't have the same level of capability as the Russians do right now, as far as we know. And really, what do we know? For all we know, they're doing stuff in subterranean places for years and years, and they got way more nukes than they say they do, and they have sophisticated launching systems. I'm pretty sure they would probably let us know in some military parade. But then again, remember, Chinese wrote The Art of War, so they're not stupid. They're not going to, put all their cards on the table right away either. So there's probably a lot of secrets there. But I'm sure U.S. intelligence is up to speed on that anyways. Now, with China, expected to be to have triple the GDP of the USA in the next 10 to 20 years or something like that. You know, it's in USA's best interest from a global dominant standpoint to make a move now, to kind of coax the Chinese into fighting a war now when they are weaker as opposed to when they're stronger. So this may well be why they're sending Taiwan these weapons. It may well be that the United States is trying to goad China into a war now while it's relatively, and I say relatively because they have the ability to mobilize millions and millions of guys. I mean, it's the Chinese. They can build buildings in a day, skyscrapers in a day. Sure, then maybe they're going to fall the next day, but they can do it, okay? They have lots of guys, they have lots of resources, and they have the ability to industrialize very quickly in a militaristic sense. So, the strategy may be to let's try to push them into a war now while they're weak. It's hard to say. Now apparently the Chinese are saying that the total value of U.S. weapons shipments to Taiwan has exceeded $70 billion. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesman Wang Wenbin said at a news conference on Monday, U.S. arms sales to Taiwan are incessantly growing in both volume and quality. He said their total value has already exceeded $70 billion. And if you're China and you're looking at this, you're saying to yourself, we got to do something quick, right? In the coming years, Washington promised to sell Taiwan M2A2 Abrams tanks, F-16 fighter jets, multiple launch rocket systems, drones, cruise missiles, sea mines, and other equipment. So, again, if you're China, you're thinking about this. You're thinking about what the hell are we going to do? Now, monkeypox cases, we got to talk about monkeypox just for a minute or two. Cases double in the UK to 57, so this outbreak is growing. I made the comment yesterday about how I found it strange that somebody had said in the comment section in a kind of, in a joking way about how, I guess they thought that I didn't understand how STDs work. But the thing is that monkeypox is not solely an STD, which is why I was concerned when they were saying that this is just a gay or bisexual disease, because it can obviously spread via other means as well. But the actual vector is not entirely understood yet, or the mode of transmission is not entirely understood. So we'll see what happens. I mean, am I losing sleep over this? Not necessarily. There was some speculation on the internets that this had leaked from the Wuhan lab, of course. However, and I got this off a website which is usually pretty, contrarian and pretty alternative in its perspectives. And they basically discovered that the researchers who were working on that specific strain say that this would be impossible because the monkeypox DNA fragment they produced was so small, less than 1/3 of the genome. So the experiment was fail-safe by virtually eliminating any risk of recovering into an infectious virus. This is in the Wuhan lab. So it's very unlikely that any experiment on monkeypox in the Wuhan lab would have leaked, but the discovery of these experiments raises alarm given the experience of COVID and the mystery surrounding its origins, we'll say, to put it lightly. Okay, what else do we got here? What other good news do we have? Vast swaths of the U.S. at risk of summer blackouts, regulator warns. A vast swath of North America from the Great Lakes to the West Coast is at risk of blackouts this summer as heat, drought, shuttered power plants, and supply chain woes strain the electric grid. It's among the most dire assessments yet from the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, a regulatory body that oversees grid stability. Now, they say that a historic drought, which is covering the western U.S., limiting supplies of hydroelectric power, and forecasts call for a hotter than average summer, meaning that more people are going to be relying on air conditioning and just energy in general. And power grids face a growing threat of cyber attacks because of the U.S. support for Ukraine following the Russian invasion, according to the NERC. Drought will limit the output of hydroelectric dams. It even threatens power plants that draw their cooling water from the Missouri River. So I didn't know about this, that it actually requires water to cool some of these power plants, which is running low according to the report. Wildfires amplified by the drought could darken the skies with smoke, cutting the output from solar plants while simultaneously forcing homes with rooftop solar panels to rely more on the grid. So it's all a vicious cycle. The only saving grace with forest fires is that there's a bit of a reflectance, solar reflectance, because just like clouds, they actually reflect the sun's light back into outer space, thereby adding a bit of a cooling effect to the environment. However, the actual combustion of the CO2 is going to heat up, is going to add to the greenhouse effect. So I'm not sure if it's probably neither a net gain or a net loss of heat. Anyways, what else do we got? On the economic front, okay, global economy in worse shape since World War II, according to the International Monetary Fund. Those great people over there at the IMF who've been making sure that, you know, every country is perpetually in debt. The global economy is facing its biggest test since Second World War, the managing director of the International Monetary Fund said at the start of the World Economic Forum in Davos. You know, that thing that we weren't invited to, but Greta Thunberg was? Add to this sharply increased volatility in financial markets and the continuing threat of climate change, we face a potential confluence of calamities. Wouldn't have guessed that. You know, our one demonetized video, what was it called? Contagion, Climate, and Conflict, was demonetized for some reason. That was it. You know, we put so much work into that video, and they just don't want people to see it for some reason. Maybe it's because, you know, they don't want this channel to get too much credit. Maybe that's what it is. They just like me free-form ranting like this because then people can just write me off as the crazy guy reading stuff that he found on the internet, as opposed to having original ideas, which we have and do occasionally from time to time. Yeah, so the IMF warning comes amid fears of global recession, with the Chinese production falling sharply due to the lingering coronavirus restrictions at the markets, facing food shortages as a result of sanctions against Russia and major commodity supplier. This is a translated article, and they completely crapped the bed. So we're just going to leave it there. You all know we're in a world of hurt right now. The Golden Arches come down near Moscow as McDonald's Russia rebrand begins. So this is the end of an era. I mean, I don't know why I printed off this story. It just felt appropriate that, you know, this really is the end of like the hope for globalization and the hope that we, as in the West in particular, would come together, and that the Berlin Wall came down and that whole thing, and the end of the Cold War, and nope, it's just all started all over again. So who knows what they're going to rebrand it as? They have yet to announce a name. Poland is in a tiff, and they tell Norway, hey, you guys are making way too much money on oil. You need to give us some of our profits. Well, maybe you should have thought of that before you started running your mouth. Anyways, Norway should share the excess profits it's been making as oil and gas prices soar amid the ongoing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Polish Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki said at the National Youth Dialogue Congress on Saturday. He says, but should we be paying Norway gigantic money for gas, 4 or 5 times more than we paid a year ago? This is sick, he said, claiming that the excess of the annual average gas and oil profit will exceed $100 billion this year for a country of 5 million people like Norway. All I can say to that is, buy the ticket, take the ride. You knew what you were doing when you got in there like a dirty shirt and started messing with the old Ruskies. So, guys, check out the, we're going to do a review on this lightweight dinghy. I always like showing you something new. You know, I mean, there's so much stuff, you know, that we've seen. You know, you've all seen knives, fire starters, things of that nature. And it just gets boring for me personally as a prepper. So I like to, as much as, you know, you got to stick to the basics, it's cool to check out new stuff. And I've always really wanted a portable boat that I could literally put in my cargo pocket. Maybe not, but almost. Maybe wear it as a fanny pack or something like that. Anyways, we're going to do a review on that soon. We're going to go fishing and see if I can catch something in my portable, lightweight dinghy. And I guess it's going to be like a bit of a bug out dinghy in case of the zombie apocalypse or something like that. Likely not a good idea, but anyways, you guys get the point. So let me know what you think in the comment section below about any of the stories that we talked about today. I think that leaked audio from China was pretty significant and pretty scary, meaning that, and the thing that we all need to keep in mind is that if that actually does transpire, it's the end of Walmart. It's the end of our retail commodities, because unless the United States looks the other way, which it sounds like they won't, you can kiss everything that you see in the stores right now goodbye. 99% of it anyways. Please like the video, guys. I appreciate it. Canadian Prepper out.